Welcome to ongoing local election coverage by Town Meeting Television. You are watching State Representative Candidate Forum for Chittenden District 7-2. This is one of 22 forums we are bringing to you in advance of the general election in November. All candidates on the ballot are invited to participate in Town Meeting TV election forums. These forums introduce you to community decision makers and connect you with issues that shape your local community. If you are watching this live, we welcome your questions at 802-862-3966. Watch Town Meeting TV on Comcast Channel 1087, Burlington Telecom Channels 17 and 217, as well as online at Town Meeting TV's YouTube page. Joining me today is Representative Pugh of District Chittenden 7-2. We will begin with opening statements. Representative Pugh, if you want to tell us, please, why you are running for re-election and a little bit about the experience that you bring to this position.
Thanks, Kristine. Thank you for moderating this. And, thank you, Channel 17. I think what you all are doing in terms of bringing to the hunters, all of us who are running for election is really important. And this election is really important. I'm Ann Pugh. I represent, as Kristine said, Chittenden District 7-2, which is 1/4 of South Burlington. I think very simply, I'm running for re-election because I love Vermont. And I really care about the well-being and future of all Vermonters. And if this pandemic has showed us anything, it has shown that there's more work to be done. And I want a Vermont that works for everyone. Given the pandemic, given the what we see in DC and elsewhere, I think part of what I bring to South Burlington and to this process is experience and a record of working across the aisle, working with the administration, working with South Burlington. And at this point in time, I think this is when experience counts. That's what you'll get with re-electing me, and I'd be so honored.
So speaking of that experience, I want to ask you about the impact that you'll have in this role. So, you have a lengthy background representing your district. What about your past work will you continue, or what will be different in your next, should you continue in this role?
What I bring, as I said before, is experience. What people will get is a legislator who seeks out and listens to different perspectives. It's important to me that all voices are heard. I may not agree with all the voices. I also can learn from new voices. Since I have been a legislator, with the exception of 4 years, I have sat on for the past 14 years in chair of the House Human Services Committee. And that's a committee that deals with people, deals with the well-being of Vermonters. It deals with and addresses the issues that Vermonters face that makes it more difficult for them to work, to go to school, to live fully. And so what you will, and that, I guess that is where I will continue to put my energy and my expertise.
Do you have any specific priorities, or is there specific legislation that you're focused on for the next biennium?
The next biennium, from my perspective, is going to be all about the pandemic, all about equity, all about ensuring that that institutional and systemic racism is addressed, that that what we have seen now with the pandemic in terms of how our society, our laws, our institutions, there's inequity. There's inequity across the board, and all Vermonters are hurting right now because of the pandemic. And so my priority will be seeing that making the shifts in those systems, whether it is in terms of access to food, or whether it is ensuring that older Vermonters are able to age and be safe in nursing homes, whether it's that our youth can be protected, whether it is that people who are wrestling with alcohol and substance use disorder have access to treatment and services that they need.
There's a lot there.
Sorry.
While we're on the topic of the pandemic, that's really sharpened our focus on inequities in healthcare. I wonder what your thoughts are on what is next for healthcare in Vermont, what changes might be coming up, that spring from what we have seen during this pandemic.
I think we've already begun to see, in terms of healthcare, we've already begun to see some changes as we as a state, and actually across the country, have had to look at things in a different way, whether it's been telemedicine, whether it's been figuring out how Vermont can recognize licenses of providers in different states, and whether it's been in terms of ensuring that we have enough people to do the job in terms of healthcare in Vermont. Vermont's in the year 3 of a waiver, or what I might say of an experiment in terms of providing medical health care differently, rather than fee for service, rather than paying for every test, every visit, but in fact, you pay for outcomes. That in doing so, the thought is that will not only save money, but Vermonters will be healthier. In year 3 of this waiver, or this experiment, we're running into some bumps. We're not saving money, and people are questioning whether this is the right way to go. What I believe is that, one, we're in the middle of something, and going back to fee for service is not going to work. It does not make Vermonters, anyone, healthier. And so it's important to continue the evaluation and to continue to see what we can do differently. I don't want to leave this conversation, though, without saying healthcare isn't medical care. And I think what I hope, my personal hope, is that what this pandemic has done has really illustrated that to everyone, that for Vermonters to be healthy, they need to have food on the table. They need to have they need to have people around them who support them, who care about them, who can, they need to have a roof over their head, and a way to be connected to the community through a job or through other activities, and to have their mental health and substance use disorder issues addressed. But these basic things: food, shelter, a job that pays, the ability to take care of those who are in their family. Doing that, Vermonters will be healthier. So if we shift the balance and put more of our fiscal resources into that part, I think Vermonters will be healthier, and I think that is something that we may see down the road.
Thank you. Viewers, you are watching Town Meeting TV Candidates Forum for Chittenden State Representative District 7-2. If you are watching this live, please give us a call at 802-862-3966 and ask your question of Representative Pugh. We love to take caller questions. You can watch more Town Meeting TV election coverage at www.ch17.tv or Comcast Channel 1087 and Burlington Telecom 17 and 217. Getting back to what you were just discussing, Representative Pugh, about more resource allocation to that whole sort of healthcare, big picture well-being for Vermonters. That I think brings us to thinking about the budget for next year. And so given probably unprecedented revenue and expense challenges over the next few years, how would you approach the budget, to address those concerns and also the priorities that you see for us in the future?
I think that Vermont is not alone, and that this is a time when the federal government continues to step up and to support states when they are in the middle of this crisis. Vermont was very fortunate in that the financial support that we got from the federal government in the past 7 months, we've gotten the small state minimum, and so per capita we have gotten more financial support than the vast majority of states. And so the first thing that I would be doing would be looking to our congressional delegation to continue to support and work with the federal government in ensuring that not just Vermont, but actually all of the United States does better. We're going to need to decide what our priorities are on the one hand, and to, as we do things differently, we are going to need to potentially stop doing some things that right now are not focused completely on recovery from the issues that the pandemic has brought up.
So while we're on the topic of finances, I also wanted to ask about education funding. There's discussion about changes to that method. Do you see a need to change the education funding method? And is that something that you would want to be addressing at this time?
We absolutely. Funding of education has historically and continues to be an issue. And if it were easy, it would have been done yesterday. Because I don't know of a legislator. I don't know of a sitting legislator. I actually don't know of too many people across the state who think that the way right now we are funding education, which is, while we try not to, it is It's a hybrid system, and that's part of the issue. It's too complicated. The Supreme Court decision years ago said that relying solely on the property tax is not constitutional. It does not promote equity in education. That said, we are seeing, and reports are showing that the system that we have now, which has state support with also, so we have a statewide property tax, which then local communities have some have have a voice in terms of what they as local communities vote for in terms of the school budget. What we have now is inequitable, it's confusing, and we need to change it. We need to perhaps focus on one that is simple, one that maybe does not, it looks at wealth and not just income, and that focuses on quality.
Thanks for sharing some specifics there. You know, equity is something that has come up several times during our conversation, and recently, right before the session ended, the legislature passed some racial equity legislation. And I wonder, so one direct question for candidates: do you support reparations and apologizing for Vermont's role in slavery and systemic racism? And then two, what else do you think we should be doing to advance dismantling systemic racism in Vermont?
Part of me wants to say, of course, and that, well, addressing historical inequity, addressing, recognizing, and acknowledging historic things that have happened in the past that are horrific is really important. It's time, and it has harmed and it has, on some level, traumatized many individuals. And we need to, and I am a white woman, and I'm not going to have the answer in terms of how to best address that. The first bill that was passed, each one that was passed this year, dealt with requiring schools, requiring public schools to have elements of their curriculum focused on equity. And that was the first thing we did. And the last thing that we did were taking steps in terms of trying to pinpoint and change some of the processes and actions that have been taken in our law enforcement community that were not intentional, but what in fact did result in racial injustice.
Well, thank you for that. We are nearing the end of our time. Is there anything you'd like to say as a closing statement to viewers?
Vermont is a wonderful place. I love Vermont. I am not a three-generation Vermonter. I chose Vermont. I've been in Vermont for a long time, and I am glad that I've been in Vermont since 1976. I came for a year, and I stayed because Vermont is a wonderful community. And we can do better. And I think that in doing better, what that means that we need to do is to have difficult conversations, some of which, Mayor, you were asking me about today. Vermont, we're strong, but the foundations that our community rests on, they're fragile. And what the pandemic has done is shown that fragility. 2021 will be about who we are, I think, as a state and where we want to be. And where I want us to be is the best state in the world, in the country, to live, to raise a family, to grow old, to work, and to recreate. But we're going to have to be bold if we want to recover. We're going to have honest conversations about our challenges. And we need to bring the voices of our neighbors together to chart this new path. And to bring your voice to the table, please vote. If you haven't turned in your ballot already, and it should be in the mail today. Actually, today's the day that today, October 23rd, is the day that the Secretary of State has said, put it in the mail. If you've missed that and you have it still in your hand, go to your local city or town clerk, bring it there, or bring it to the polls on election day. And if instead you want to go to the polls will all be open. Bringing your voice to the table is by voting. In the meantime, wash your hands, wear a mask, and please stay 6 feet apart. It's so important.
Thank you. So yes, Election Day, November 3rd, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Thank you for tuning in to Town Meeting TV, ongoing coverage of statewide and regional candidates. You can find this in more forms at www.ch17.tv. Thank you for watching.